When people speak of wealth, they often picture kings sitting on golden thrones or oil tycoons ruling vast empires. But in the 19th century, there was one family whose fortune surpassed them all, a family whose name became a symbol of power, mystery, and immense influence. That name was Rothschild, the beginning in Frankfurt. Our story starts not in a palace or castle, but in a modest house on the narrow streets of Frankfurt, Germany, during the late 1700s. Inside that small home lived Meyer Amschel Rothschild, a man whose sharp mind and extraordinary vision would change the financial world forever. At that time, Europe was divided, not just by geography, but by war, politics, and power. Kings ruled, merchants traded, and ordinary people struggled to survive. But Meyer Amschel saw something others didn't. He saw how money, carefully managed and wisely invested, could connect nations. He believed banking wasn't just about coins or ledgers. It was about trust, information, and timing. In his early years, Meyer Amschel worked as a coin dealer. His sharp eye for rare coins earned him the attention of wealthy clients, including local princes. Soon his small shop began to grow into something much larger, a financial enterprise. Through intelligence, patience, and a deep understanding of economics, he started lending money and managing the fortunes of the powerful. But Meyer Amschel didn't want his success to end with him. He had a plan, one that would make the Rothschild name echo across Europe for generations. The 5 Arrows. He had 5 sons, and he trained each one to understand finance, politics, and diplomacy. They were his legacy, his 5 arrows, as the family would later call them. Each son would represent one branch of the family, and each would carry the Rothschild name into a different European city. One son went to London, another to Paris, one to Vienna, another to Naples, and one stayed behind in Frankfurt. This was a revolutionary idea, a family banking network that stretched across countries, all connected by trust and blood. At a time when sending a message between nations could take weeks, the Rothschilds found ways to communicate faster and more securely than anyone else. They used private couriers, coded letters, and family messengers who carried crucial information before it reached the newspapers or governments. When wars broke out, and Europe saw plenty of them, this gave them an incredible advantage. They knew what was happening before anyone else did. They could move money, fund armies, and predict the outcomes of battles based on information no one else had. And so, from those 5 arrows, a financial empire was born. The power behind thrones. By the early 1800s, the Rothschilds were no longer just bankers. They were power brokers. Kings and queens turned to them when they needed money to fight wars or build empires. Governments borrowed from them to construct railways, industries, and fleets. Their influence wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, strategic, and deeply woven into the structure of European society. They financed both sides of conflicts at times, ensuring that no matter who won, their investment and their influence remained intact. Their motto could have been summed up in one phrase: control the money and you control the world. And in a sense, they did. By the mid-1800s, the Rothschild family had become the wealthiest family on the planet. Their fortune was so immense that people joked even the richest kings borrowed from them. But wealth alone wasn't what set them apart. What truly made them legendary was how they used it. Beyond banking, the pursuit of beauty. With great riches came a taste for art, architecture, and culture. Members of the Rothschild family built palaces and collected masterpieces from all over Europe. They funded scientific discoveries, supported hospitals, and helped shape cities. They didn't just want to be remembered as bankers. They wanted to be remembered as builders of civilization itself. Their homes weren't just houses. They were showcases of art, music, and imagination. Every object, every painting, every sculpture told a story, not just of wealth, but of a refined mind and a deep appreciation for human achievement. And among them, one man would carry that passion to extraordinary heights, a man whose name would become forever linked to one of the most magnificent homes in England. Enter Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild. Born in Paris in 1839, Ferdinand de Rothschild came into a world of privilege, but also of responsibility. From a young age, he was surrounded by the symbols of his family's power: elegant homes, brilliant conversations, and priceless art. But he was also taught the importance of using wealth wisely. He was a man of vision and taste, someone who appreciated history and the finer things in life. Yet his story wasn't one of endless joy. His life would be touched by tragedy and shaped by loss. In 1865, Ferdinand married his cousin, Evelina de Rothschild. The two shared a deep affection and seemed destined for a happy life together. But just a year later, tragedy struck. During childbirth, Evelina and their baby both died. The loss devastated Ferdinand. He never remarried. Instead, he poured his grief and his energy into something that would honor her memory and leave his own mark on history. From sorrow to creation. To cope with his sorrow, Ferdinand turned to his passions: philanthropy, politics, and art. He helped found the Evelina Hospital for sick children in London, ensuring that other families might be spared the pain he had known. He also entered Parliament, serving as a respected member of the House of Commons. But, above all, he became a collector of beauty, history, and craftsmanship. He was drawn to the art and architecture of France's Renaissance period, where elegance met imagination. It was this fascination that led to his greatest project, a dream home unlike any other, a French-style chateau rising in the English countryside. That home would become known as Waddesdon Manor, built not just as a residence, but as a masterpiece. Waddesdon Manor was meant to be a living work of art, a space where the spirit of beauty and innovation would live side by side. Here, Ferdinand could surround himself with the things he loved, the paintings, furniture, and objects that spoke to centuries of artistry. It would also be a place for people, politicians, artists, and even royalty, to come together in an atmosphere of refinement and inspiration. But how did this dream come to life? How did one man's imagination turn into one of the most breathtaking estates in all of England? The dream of Waddesdon Manor. After the early years of sorrow and rebuilding, Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild turned toward creation, the kind that transforms landscapes and leaves legacies. His heart, still carrying the loss of Evelina, found a new rhythm in the pursuit of art and beauty. He wanted to build something that would last beyond him, something that captured the grace of the past and the innovation of his age. He searched the English countryside until he found a hill in Buckinghamshire, surrounded by rolling fields and peaceful woods. It was there, in the quiet embrace of nature, that he decided to build his dream home, Waddesdon Manor, a French palace in England. Unlike most English country houses, Ferdinand's vision was not rooted in traditional British design. He admired the chateaux of France's Loire Valley, elegant palaces with towers, turrets, and sweeping staircases. These were homes of charm and refinement, places that seemed to float between fantasy and reality. He decided to bring that same magic to England. To do this, he hired French architect Gabriel Hippolyte d'Estailleur, a master of the French Renaissance style. Together, they planned a home that looked as if it had been transported from the pages of a fairy tale. Construction began in the 1870s, and Ferdinand oversaw every detail. He was not content with mere imitation. He wanted perfection. Stone by stone, craftsmen shaped the building with precision. Decorative carvings, elaborate moldings, and graceful windows turned the manor into a masterpiece of architecture. When it was completed, visitors were stunned. Rising proudly from the green hills, Waddesdon Manor appeared like a French palace dropped into the heart of England. The tall spires gleamed in the sunlight, and the long driveway led to grand iron gates that opened into another world, a world of art, luxury, and imagination. The grand entrance, the East Gallery. Stepping through the front doors of Waddesdon Manor, guests were immediately greeted by the East Gallery, a space that captured everything Ferdinand stood for. The air seemed to shimmer with warmth as light reflected off the polished wooden panels that covered the walls. Golden decorations lined the edges, glowing softly in the flicker of the lamps. Everywhere one looked, there was something to admire: paintings, sculptures, and rare objects collected from across Europe. But one object stood out more than any other: the famous elephant automaton. Created in 1774 by a French clockmaker, the automaton was a marvel of both art and engineering. When it moved, its tiny mechanisms brought the figure to life. The little elephant could lift its trunk, twist its head, and even appear to walk. For visitors of the 19th century, it was like watching magic in motion. The East Gallery was more than a hallway. It was a prelude, a promise of what awaited deeper inside the manor. Every painting, every object had a story, and each one revealed Ferdinand's love for craftsmanship and history. The smoking room, moving from the East Gallery, guests would enter the smoking room, a place where elegance met comfort. The walls were decorated with detailed plasterwork, the ceilings high and airy. In the evenings, this room filled with soft laughter and the gentle hum of conversation as gentlemen gathered after dinner. Here, the atmosphere changed. The grand display of wealth gave way to intimacy. It was a space for discussion about art, politics, and the changing world outside. Fine porcelain figures and tapestries adorned the room, creating a sense of calm refinement. It wasn't just about showing off riches. Ferdinand understood that beauty also lived in the smaller details, in how a room made people feel. The smoking room was designed to encourage thought and friendship, a perfect balance between grandeur and grace. The dining room, a feast for the senses. Among all the rooms in Waddesdon Manor, few could rival the splendor of the dining room. When guests gathered here, they knew they were in the presence of something extraordinary. The table stretched long and shining under the crystal light of chandeliers. Silverware sparkled like stars, and the finest china gleamed on the polished surface. The air carried the sense of rich foods and candle wax, mixed with the sound of quiet conversation and laughter. But what truly amazed visitors was the lighting. At a time when most homes still relied on gas lamps or candles, Ferdinand had installed electric lights, shaped to look like flickering candles. The effect was enchanting. The room appeared to glow with a soft golden warmth, blending the charm of tradition with the marvels of modern technology. Even Queen Victoria herself was captivated when she visited. She had heard stories of the manor's beauty, but seeing it in person left her speechless. The Queen admired the electric chandeliers and remarked on their brilliance. For her, it was a glimpse of the future disguised as the elegance of the past. For Ferdinand, that was exactly the goal. Every element of the dining room reflected his belief that progress and beauty could exist side by side. The blue dining room. Not every meal required the full spectacle of the grand dining table. For smaller gatherings, Ferdinand preferred the blue dining room, a more intimate space, modern in its French-inspired design. The light blue walls, delicate gold accents, and fine furniture created a peaceful atmosphere. This room was designed for closeness. Here, conversations flowed easily, laughter came naturally, and guests felt at ease. It showed another side of Ferdinand's taste, less about impressing others and more about enjoying the company of friends. The Grey Drawing Room. The Music Room. Next was the Grey Drawing Room, also known as the Music Room. It was one of the manor's most graceful spaces, filled with soft colors and gentle light. The plaster figures on the walls seemed to come alive, their faces almost moving in the flicker of the lamps. This was where guests gathered for evenings of music and entertainment. A piano stood proudly near the window, and the room would fill with melodies that drifted down the corridors. It was a place where art came to life, where voices mingled with notes, and where laughter met harmony. The Grey Drawing Room revealed Ferdinand's love for culture, not just collecting art, but living within it. The Morning Room. In contrast to the grand and glittering halls, the morning room offered calm simplicity. This was Ferdinand's personal retreat, a space for reading, writing, or enjoying a quiet breakfast. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, falling softly on shelves filled with books and delicate porcelain. It was a room of peace, where the beauty of the manor met the comfort of daily life. In many ways, it represented Ferdinand himself, refined, thoughtful, and quietly strong. The Red Drawing Room. But if the morning room reflected serenity, the Red Drawing Room was pure drama. Stepping inside was like walking into a chamber of fire and gold. The walls glowed with rich crimson fabric, and every edge shimmered with gilded decoration. Only the fireplace mantel remained unadorned, giving the eyes a place to rest amid the brilliance. Visitors were often stunned. The room seemed almost alive with color and light. It wasn't simply luxurious, it was overwhelming, and that was the point. The Red Drawing Room was a statement, a declaration of the Rothschild legacy. Powerful, daring, unforgettable. By the time guests reached this room, they understood what Waddesdon Manor truly was. It wasn't just a home, it was a vision, one that celebrated the heights of human creativity. Life inside Waddesdon Manor. Inside Waddesdon Manor, every corner told a story. The grand halls and galleries dazzled visitors, but the private rooms revealed something deeper. The personal world of Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild, a man who had built beauty not only for others to see, but for himself to live within. The Tower Drawing Room, the library. At the top of the manor's western wing stood one of its most remarkable spaces, the Tower Drawing Room, better known as the library. It was a room of intellect and reflection, filled with thousands of carefully chosen books. The tall shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, their dark wood polished to a gentle shine. The scent of leather bindings and parchment hung in the air, mixing with the faint aroma of fresh flowers that servants placed daily on the tables. Sunlight filtered through the high windows, touching the gold lettering on the spines of volumes that had traveled across centuries. Here, Ferdinand spent many quiet hours. Though known for his elegance and charm, he was also a man of learning. He loved history, art, and politics, subjects that filled his mind with ideas and his library with treasures. Some of the books were centuries old, bound in fine leather with gilded pages. Others were more recent, collected for study or curiosity. Together, they reflected a lifetime of curiosity and care. Unlike the glittering Red Drawing Room, this space was designed for peace. Plush armchairs and overstuffed couches invited visitors to sit, read, or simply enjoy conversation. It was a perfect balance, the grandeur of a noble home softened by the warmth of a personal comfort. In this room, Ferdinand seemed most himself, a man of intellect, taste, and reflection. For him, the library wasn't just a room, it was a sanctuary. The billiard room, leisure and friendship. While the library spoke of thought and solitude, the billiard room reflected another side of life at Waddesdon: friendship, laughter, and leisure. At first glance, it might have looked like any gentleman's retreat, but this was Waddesdon, and nothing here was ordinary. The ceiling rose high above the polished billiard table, and the lighting was arranged perfectly to illuminate every corner. The furniture was comfortable, the decor refined, yet the spirit of the room was lively. This was where guests came to relax after the formalities of dinner. Here, they could unwind, challenge each other at billiards, or share stories over brandy and cigars. For Ferdinand, it was a place of connection, a reminder that even in a world of grandeur, joy often lived in the simplest moments. The laughter of visitors and the gentle clack of billiard balls would echo through the night, carrying through the corridors until the last candles burned low. The bedrooms, rest and elegance. Beyond the public rooms, the manor opened into a series of luxurious private suites. The bedrooms of Waddesdon were more than sleeping chambers. They were works of art. Each one had its own personality, shaped by color, texture, and mood. Some were draped in soft blues and greens, others in deep reds or gold. Every fabric was chosen with care, every pattern designed to soothe or impress. The beds were large and inviting, layered with silks and velvets. The furniture was French, the carpets hand-woven, and the artwork, always original. Many of the rooms included private boudoirs, cozy sitting areas where guests could rest, write letters, or prepare for the day. And in a rare touch for the 19th century, several of the bedrooms had their own bathrooms. At a time when indoor plumbing was still a novelty, Waddesdon Manor stood at the forefront of modern luxury. Running water, private washrooms, and heated rooms made guests feel as though they had stepped into the future. For many visitors, staying at Waddesdon was like entering a dream, one that combined the beauty of the past with the comforts of the modern world. Life at Waddesdon. Daily life at Waddesdon flowed with rhythm and grace. Servants moved silently through the halls, ensuring that fires stayed lit, flowers remained fresh, and meals appeared precisely on time. Yet, despite the manor's formality, there was warmth within its walls. Ferdinand believed a great house should not intimidate. it should inspire. His guests often remarked that while Waddesdon was magnificent, it also felt alive, filled with laughter, conversation, and the quiet hum of contentment. Evenings were often the highlight. After dinner in the grand dining room, guests might drift toward the music room, where a pianist or small ensemble performed. Others would retreat to the library or the smoking room, while the younger visitors might wander the gardens under the starlight. The gardens themselves were a wonder. Carefully designed terraces, fountains, and sculptures spread across hundreds of acres. Exotic plants bloomed in the glass houses, and winding paths led to hidden benches overlooking the valley. Everything was arranged not just for beauty, but for emotion. Ferdinand wanted visitors to feel transported, to leave behind the world of ordinary life, and enter one shaped entirely by imagination. The heart behind the grandeur. Yet behind the perfection of Waddesdon lay a man who had endured deep sorrow. The loss of Evelina had marked Ferdinand forever. Though he surrounded himself with beauty and company, there remained an emptiness he never quite filled. But he didn't let grief destroy him. Instead, he transformed it into creation. His generosity extended beyond Waddesdon's walls. The Evelina Hospital for Sick Children in London, named in honor of his late wife, became one of his proudest achievements. It offered care and hope to families who could not afford medical help. In this way, Ferdinand's wealth became a force for good. He believed that those blessed with fortune had a duty to share it, not just in charity, but in creating things of lasting value. Waddesdon, too, was part of that legacy. It wasn't built only for himself. It was built to preserve art, culture, and craftsmanship for future generations. The final years of Baron Ferdinand. By the 1890s, Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild had become one of the most respected men in England. He was admired not only for his wealth, but for his wisdom, humor, and kindness. Politicians respected his intellect, artists valued his taste, and guests cherished his hospitality. But even as he enjoyed success, time moved forward. His health began to decline, and in 1898, at the age of 59, Ferdinand de Rothschild passed away. His death was deeply felt, not just by his family, but by the countless people he had touched through his work, his charity, and his art. Waddesdon Manor fell silent for a time, its great halls echoing with memories of dinners, music, and laughter that had once filled them. Yet, Ferdinand had planned carefully. He left Waddesdon to his beloved sister, Alice de Rothschild, knowing she would protect his dream. And she did, with fierce devotion. In her hands, the story of Waddesdon was far from over. The guardians of the legacy. When Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild passed away in 1898, the world of Waddesdon grew quiet. The lights still glowed in its halls, the chandeliers still sparkled, but the laughter and conversations that had once filled the air were gone. Yet, even in silence, the manor stood strong, a monument to art, taste, and human vision. But the story didn't end there. Ferdinand had left his masterpiece in the hands of someone who loved it just as deeply as he did. His sister, Alice de Rothschild. Alice de Rothschild, the guardian of Waddesdon. Alice de Rothschild was not a woman easily intimidated. She was strong-willed, intelligent, and precise, traits that served her well as the new mistress of Waddesdon Manor. While others might have feared the task of managing such an estate, Alice embraced it fully. To her, the manor was not merely a house. It was her brother's soul made visible, and she was determined to protect it. She set about maintaining the estate with an almost military level of discipline. The gardens had to be immaculate, the art perfectly cared for, and the furniture always in place. Servants quickly learned that Miss Alice, as she was often called, missed nothing. Her exacting standards became so famous that the staff even gave her rules a name: Miss Alice's Rules. These were her personal commandments for how Waddesdon should be run. Every object had a proper place. Every painting had to be kept at the correct temperature and light level. Dust was not merely frowned upon. It was treated as an enemy. Some found her strictness intimidating, but over time, it became clear that her firmness came from love. She understood what her brother had created, not just a home, but a legacy. And she saw it as her duty to preserve it for the future. Under Alice's care, Waddesdon remained alive. She continued to host small gatherings, tending to the estate's grandeur, but avoiding the kind of lavish parties her brother once held. She preferred quiet elegance to spectacle. Her focus was on preservation, ensuring that nothing of Ferdinand's vision was ever lost. And thanks to her dedication, much of what visitors see at Waddesdon today still reflects her brother's time almost exactly. A world in change. As the years passed, the world outside the manor transformed. The 20th century brought war, industrial growth, and political upheaval. Yet, within Waddesdon's gates, time seemed to move slower. It was a place where beauty held its ground against change, where the 19th century spirit still lingered in every golden frame and marble statue. Alice de Rothschild lived to see the dawn of a new era. When she died in 1922, the estate passed to her nephew, James de Rothschild, who would become the next great guardian of the manor. James de Rothschild, the heir and the historian. James de Rothschild was born into privilege, but like his ancestors, he carried a deep sense of responsibility. He had inherited more than wealth. He had inherited a legacy. Where Alice had been a guardian, James became a curator. He saw Waddesdon not only as a family home, but as a cultural treasure that belonged to history itself. Throughout his life, he added to the collections with the same taste and care that Ferdinand had shown decades earlier. He expanded the library, restored artworks, and ensured that the gardens flourished. He also welcomed historians and scholars to study the manor's contents, recognizing that it was more than a personal collection. It was a piece of European heritage. When the Second World War arrived, the Rothschilds, like so many families, faced danger and uncertainty. Yet, even during those dark years, James made sure that Waddesdon's treasures were protected. Priceless paintings and furniture were carefully stored away, guarded from bombs and fire. After the war, James de Rothschild returned to his beloved estate with a renewed purpose. He realized that the future of Waddesdon could no longer depend solely on one family. The world was changing fast, and maintaining such a vast property was becoming impossible for any single person, no matter how wealthy. A gift to the nation. And so, James made a historic decision, one that would secure the manor's survival for generations to come. Upon his death in 1957, James de Rothschild left Waddesdon Manor to the National Trust, along with a fund to ensure its upkeep. It was one of the most generous donations in British history. Through this act, he transformed Waddesdon from a private family estate into a public treasure. No longer would it be hidden behind gates or reserved for the elite. Instead, people from all walks of life could walk through its halls, stand beneath its chandeliers, and experience the world that Ferdinand had imagined so many years before. Today, that decision continues to echo. Because of James de Rothschild, Waddesdon is not just preserved, it is alive. Waddesdon today. More than a century after it was built, Waddesdon Manor remains one of the most visited country houses in England. It rises proudly from the hills of Buckinghamshire, its towers and turrets catching the morning light, just as they did in Ferdinand's time. Visitors come from all over the world to see the art, the architecture, and the history that live within its walls. Inside, the East Gallery still greets guests with its warm wood paneling and golden glow. The elephant automaton continues to fascinate audiences, just as it once delighted 19th century guests. In the dining room, the electric candles still shine, symbols of how Ferdinand blended modern technology with timeless beauty. The red drawing room gleams with gold, the library remains filled with rare books, and the morning room still captures the soft light that Ferdinand once enjoyed with his tea. Even the gardens, carefully restored, bloom with the same grace that Alice demanded long ago. But Waddesdon is more than just a preserved house. It's a living museum. The National Trust, along with the Rothschild Foundation, continues to manage the property, organizing exhibitions, research, and events that keep its story alive. Art historians study its collections. School children tour its rooms, learning about a time when elegance ruled the world. In summer, concerts and festivals fill the grounds. In winter, the manor glows with thousands of lights, transforming into a wonderland that draws visitors from near and far. Waddesdon is no longer just a monument to the past. It is a bridge between history and the present. The legacy of the Rothschilds, The story of Waddesdon Manor is, in many ways, the story of the Rothschild family itself, a tale of ambition, creativity, and endurance. It began in the narrow streets of Frankfurt with Meyer Amschel Rothschild, who dreamed of a financial empire that could connect nations. It grew through his sons, who built that dream into reality. It blossomed through Ferdinand, who turned wealth into beauty, and it endured through Alice and James, who protected and shared it with the world. The Rothschilds were more than bankers. They were visionaries, people who saw art and architecture as expressions of civilization itself. They believed that wealth, when used wisely, could create not just comfort, but meaning. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy of all. When visitors step into Waddesdon Manor today, they're not just seeing a grand house. They're walking into a story, one woven from love and loss, from dreams and duty, from beauty that refuses to fade. Every painting, every sculpture, every carved piece of wood whispers the same message, that true greatness isn't measured in gold or numbers, but in what we choose to build and preserve for others. A house that lives on. As the sun sets over the English countryside, Waddesdon Manor still stands, elegant, serene, and filled with memory. The soft light catches the windows, reflecting centuries of history in their glass. Somewhere in those reflections, you can almost imagine Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild himself, walking through the halls, pausing before a favorite painting, perhaps smiling at the laughter of guests drifting from the music room. His dream, born from both love and loss, continues to shine. Because Waddesdon is not just a building, it is a promise that beauty, generosity, and vision can outlast time. And so, long after the last of the Rothschilds have left its halls, their story remains. A story carved in stone, painted in gold, and alive in every visitor who walks through its doors. That is the world of the Rothschilds. That is the legacy of Waddesdon Manor.